Alright, so it's the Prussian player's turn to move. So the first thing that happens, just like for the French, they should have done this first. He has a flank march possibly on the board, so he's going to roll for the flank march. He rolls a 3, so he writes that 3 down someplace, and he's going to keep adding each turn he rolls. He keeps adding until he gets 30 points, then he can bring his flank march on the field. Normally that would mean you'd need 5 or 6 turns before a flank march comes on. It can come on as early as 3, or it can take a long time before it gets here. So the next thing that's going to happen is the attached leader's phase. So first thing he's going to do is he's going to place his general on the board. Now he can put him anywhere he wants. He's an average general. We figured that out earlier. So he has a 9-inch command radius. So basically from one side of the battlefield to the other, for him, it's about 21 inches. So he can almost command everybody, but somebody's going to be out of range. So he's going to go ahead and place, he's more concerned about this cavalry than anything else, so he wants to make sure he can control those guys. So he's going to go ahead and position right there. He also puts lieutenants on the board. Now remember, he's saying that he has a flank march, and a flank march has to have a lieutenant. So he's just going to put 1 lieutenant on the board. So now that that lieutenant's on the board, he can go ahead and move him up to 12 inches to attach or to create a division. So in this case, he chooses to move over here, and he's going to form a division that consists of this brigade with attached battery, this brigade with attached battery, and this brigade right here. Alright? The next thing he's going to do is determine anybody that can be moved for free. Now this guy could be moved for free, but he's already part of a division, so we don't need to worry about that. This guy can be moved for free, so we're going to mark him. Now remember, a free move means that the opposing player is not in engagement range, which is 6 inches of infantry and 10 inches of cavalry. So up here, 6 inches, these guys are not engaged, and they are within command range, so these guys are free moves. So you put him and him, these are both free moves. Over here on this side, everybody is outside of the general's command range, so nobody is free. They would require command points to move. So we're going to go ahead first of all and issue the 4 command points that we have. It costs 1 command point to order a unit that's unengaged and within command range, or that's engaged, that's unengaged and within command point, or 2 points if it's engaged. So anyway, so this unit right here, he is engaged by this cavalry, but he's within command range, so it takes 1 point for that lieutenant to move. So we give that lieutenant a command point. And that's to move these 3 units right here with their attached batteries. This guy's a free move. This guy here, I didn't mark him, but he should have been a free move also. Let me do that. Those guys are free moves. So I've got 3 more command points that I can use. And I'm going to use those to issue a command point here, a command point here, and a command point here. This brigade does not have a command point, so he will not be able to move. Now that I've issued my command points, I can go ahead and choose somebody to start moving first. And since the critical sector is really what's going on with these cavalry coming over here, I'm going to go ahead and roll for them first. So I roll for this division. Now it gets a 10. That's an excellent roll. That's actually a mandatory charge if one of my cavalry units was within 5 inches or my infantry units was within 3 inches of an opposing unit. They would have to charge. But in this case, that doesn't happen. Instead, they're just going to get 3 actions to move. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to leave these guys in place. I'm going to go ahead and back these guys out, doing a fighting withdrawal, and bring the battery with them. And these guys will go there as well. And then I'm going to keep my lieutenant kind of centrally located. That takes care of that command point. Command points over here, I'm going to start with this guy here, up front. He rolls a 6, 7, 8 for being unengaged, 9, 10 for being in column, so that gives him 3 actions. So he's going to move forward and occupy the edge of the wood line. Take that command point away. Roll for this guy. A 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gives him 2 actions, but all he's doing is moving forward into a supporting position anyway. So he moves up within 1 inch here. Remember, the outline of the forest represents the forest. The trees are just there to look good. For this cavalry unit, I'm going to roll for it. Gets a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is 2 actions. 2 actions gives it 10 inches of movement. Now it can about face for free. And then I'm going to have it wheel from the outside corner and move 10 inches. It's going to lose an inch going over this hill, so 9 inches total movement. Head toward this threatened flank. Now I've got some free moves. Now, these guys are not going to move. I like where they're at. They're fine. So I take their free moves markers away. Now I'm going to roll for that elite unit there. 5, 6, 7 for being unengaged, 8, 9 for being in field column, 10 for being elite. So it gets 3 actions. So it's going to wheel from the outside, move to right here just behind the hill, and it's going to use its last action to form square. Now, as I mentioned in one of my earlier videos where I talked about brigade formations, this doesn't mean that the entire brigade rushes together and forms one gigantic square. It could be that the brigade commander puts a couple of his battalions in square to protect the flanks and leaves some in line. He could put each battalion in a separate square. He's got a lot of options, but I like the look of squares on the battlefield, so that's what we've got here. So he's in square, so that removes this marker. And the last one I've got for free move is this brigade right here, but it's going to hold its position. Actually, it's not. I'm going to go ahead and roll for it. 3, 4, 5 for being unengaged, 6, 7 for being in column formation gives it 2 actions. So it's going to wheel and move into a position here where it can support the square. Take that free move marker off, put the lieutenant back in place. Okay, so that finishes all the moves. Okay, so the next thing would be any additional spotting that takes place. Now, I'm the moving player gets to spot first. There's nothing out here up. Actually, he can see this battery right now, and he can see this infantry. Actually, all of these guys are visible because the farm is only a single or a small cluster of buildings. It doesn't block line of sight like a town does. So basically, all of these will be revealed. But the way it works is he picks one unit. So he picks this one. It turns out to be light infantry. And then he has to reveal himself. So he's light infantry. So those units are put on the board. Now these guys had announced earlier that they were in skirmish formation. And of course the Prussian will also deploy in skirmish on the edge of the wood line. Now, all the rest of these units are revealed because he can spot them. That's a light battery and 2 more light infantry half brigades. All right, so the light battery goes on here. I'm using the light battery that's actually shown as 2 half batteries, but when it operates like this, it simply acts as a full battery. And I'm going to go ahead and put out the other 2 light infantry brigades. these guys declared they were in light infantry or skirmish formation so that they could move through the woods here. Now I'm going to have to kind of fudge a little bit on their formation, put one behind, or they would have just taken up too much frontage. But later on, he can always change one of them into a formed unit so that he's got some melee ability as well. None of these two guys are visible because they're behind the woods. He's still hidden. These guys are still hidden. So that's all the reveal here. So once the reveal's done, we're going to go into defensive fire. In this case, it's going to be the French. None of the French batteries have moved during this segment, so they all fire at full effect. This guy is within effective range, within 8 inches of the skirmishers. Yep. So he's going to fire at full effect at effective range. That would normally be a 4. But he is firing at skirmishers. That halves it to a 2. And the skirmishers are deployed in the woods. Halves it again to a 1. So he's got a chance 1 of inflicting a casualty. He misses. The battery up on the hill is going to fire at the guys up here again. It's at long range. It's normally at 2. He misses. You know what I've been forgetting to do? French artillery is better than everybody else's. They get a +1. All French batteries get a +1. British get that same add. So I should have made that a 5, but that still would have been a miss. It still would have been a miss over there. And finally over here we've got the half battery. It did not move this time, and it has a square it can fire into. So it's within effective range. Half batteries don't get the +1 bonus that French get, unless they're operating like this one over here where it's 2 half batteries together. So it's effective range. Normally that would be 2 points for a half battery. It's doubled because it's a square. That means you've got a total of 4. And we roll a 1, so we inflict a casualty on the square. So we mark that casualty. Now when it's a square, there's no rear rank. You just mark left or right on one of the stands. Okay. So the only casualty that was taken was on the square. They're elite, so they normally take a 9 or less, they're good. Only a 10 will break them. And I roll an 8, so they're okay. Alright, so that finishes the fire phase. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the French defensive fire. So now it's the Prussian offensive fire phase. Okay, these guys right here are going to do their same shot against the skirmishers. They're at effective range because it's a heavy battery. So normally that would be 4, 5 because they're heavy, 6, 7 because they are in column formation, a 50% bonus. They hit. So these guys have already taken a lot of damage, even though they're not even too close to the enemy. No fire over here, so the battery up here will fire at these guys again. And again, it is also at effective range. Normally a 4, 5, 6 because of their formation. They roll a 6, so they inflict a casualty. So we mark 1 here. Alright, so now we're going to test morale again. Now this guy's got 2 casualties on him, but the casualty doesn't affect his combat during the turn, or his morale during the turn. So he's still at an 8 or less. He rolls an 8, so he's okay, and he's a 7 or less. He rolls a 2, so they're both okay. So that finishes all the fire. There's no melee to have happen, so that completes a full turn. Now what I'm probably going to do is skip a turn and get the guys closer and get them into action. So I'll play a turn myself, and then I'll show you turn 3, where we should be able to get into some firefights and some melee so you can see how those work. Alright, thanks. Okay, so the French won the initiative and chose to move first. This shows their position after the move and after additional units were revealed, but before any fire combat, just so you can see where everything is. On your right, you can see that the French Light Infantry Division, 3 brigades has moved forward. They've put 2 of their brigades back into columns so that they're available to charge next turn. Skirmishers can't charge. And they've moved their light artillery battery forward to support. In the center, they moved their skirmishers and attached battery forward to threaten the hill, backing them up with a line infantry brigade, and they were able to bring up a second line infantry brigade and the heavy artillery battery to support, but they're a little further back. In the center, they still show 3 stanzas, deployment counters in the center, and on the right, 2 cavalry deployment counters as well. On the far left, it's been revealed that that is, in fact, all 4 brigades of the French cavalry. So there's 2 heavies and 2 lights there, plus the battery. So they're showing that they're really threatening that flank. And it did reveal that there was a Prussian conscript brigade backing up the square and the line on the hill, and that also the other cavalry deployment counter was a dummy counter, so that was revealed. So that's what it looks like before combat. I'll go ahead and execute that. Then I'll show the the Prussian move, and we'll show you where that ends up. Okay? Thanks. Okay, I just want to talk briefly about one thing that happened when the French moved. They moved their light cavalry brigade and their attached battery to within point-blank range for the artillery of that square. Now that allows the square to make a reaction move. Because it's a point-blank range, it can make a half move to the rear, which it does. It moved to the rear. It also pushed back that supporting brigade of conscripts, and that put it in a position where at least now it's not in point-blank range. It's still going to take damage, but it's not point-blank. So I just wanted to point that out. That's one of the reaction moves that can be made. Alright, so this shows the Prussian position after his move, but before any fire has taken place. On the right flank, the skirmishers in the woods have simply held position. On the center, on the hill, he's gone ahead and deployed into line formation, so he's not as vulnerable to artillery. And he's moved forward his supporting brigade that's still up on the back crest of the hill. He did back up on the left flank. He did back up his conscript cavalry again. He is facing an entire division of French cavalry, of course. And he brought that deployment counter, French deployment counter cavalry up there, put them behind so they're still going to be hidden from view, but available for in case there's combat. Up on the hill on the left, he redeployed the line brigade that was up there into square so that they're ready to defend against the cavalry as well, and he shifted his conscript infantry brigade a little bit to the right so that it can support the squares in case they get charged. So that's where they're at before fire happens, so we're going to go ahead and execute fire, and then after that I will go ahead and go through turn 3 from top to bottom so you can see how that works. We should be getting some firefights and some charges and some other stuff so we can see how those are executed. Okay, so we're now looking at things at the end of turn 2, beginning of turn 3. A little bit of fire happened at the end of turn 2 where the Prussians did a little bit of adjustment of their line, some additional casualties, but nothing major. Nobody's been broken, nobody's even lost a morale roll yet, so everything looks okay. So we're going to start turn 3. We're going to start this the normal way by determining command points for both sides. Now the French have 4 cavalry brigades, 2 line infantry, and 4 light infantry brigades. Now the light infantry brigades do count for command points even though they're half brigades, because a half brigade takes a command point to move. So we've got 4 cavalry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 infantry units. That's 10 units total. That gives them a command base of 3 command points. He rolls a 10-sided die. He only gets 1 additional command point with a roll of 2. So he starts out with 4. The Prussians right now have 1, 2, 3 infantry, 4 with that cavalry, 5 with that infantry, 6 with the light infantry. That gives them a command base of 1, and a 7 gives them 3 more, so they also end up with 4 command points to use. Now, the reason you roll command points first is because the number of command points you get may have an impact on whether or not you choose to move first or second if you win the initiative. If you have a lot of command points, you may want to move first. If you only have a few, you may want to move second so you can use them more efficiently to react to what happens. Okay, so we're going to determine the initiative. The French had it last time, so they add a +2 to their die roll. So the French roll a 2 + 2 is 4. And the Prussians roll off the table, but then they roll a 7. So that means the Prussians have taken the initiative and they get the chance to move first or second here. So, based on the situation, I'm going to have the Prussians move first. That way they can maybe adjust to the situation, which is looking pretty critical over there on their left flank. So we'll slide on over there and see what they're going to do.